Good evening and welcome to Virginia's Views and Vibes. I'm your host, Virginia Gardner. Tonight I have political commentator, historian, entrepreneur, and journalist for the Daily Caller and the Boston Herald. It is my pleasure to introduce my guest, Rosheed Walters. Rosheed, welcome. Welcome to Newton. Welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you.
It's an
We've been
honor.
talking a little bit before the camera started, and I just want you to tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I son of immigrants from the Caribbean. Grew up single mother household in Dorchester, Massachusetts. Attended Boston Public Schools. Attended Morehouse College for a year and finished my bachelor's degree at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I had a little bit of time in local politics. I did some work in the mayor's office in Boston. Owned a few businesses, and I'm an opinion writer. I write with the Daily Caller. I've appeared on Fox. I was writing for the Herald at one point as well, so that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah. Familiar voice on Dan Ray, I might add.
Oh, I love Dan. I think Dan is a Newton resident.
Newton resident,
So shout
yes.
out to Dan Ray.
How did you get involved in politics?
Always loved
you're
it.
busy and went to school, very successful. How did you fit politics into
Always
this?
loved it ever since I was a child. I think one
Really?
thing I credit my mother for doing is, I was always reading about the presidents, and lo and behold, to me as a 5-year-old child, I didn't know that we had presidents that were from Massachusetts. So my mother said, "Hey, let's go to the Adams house," and I got to get kind of introduced to politics through, the Adams presidency. I got introduced through the American Revolution because I love history, always did. So, this is where the country was born, in Boston. So being able to go and see the sites myself was phenomenal. And, the interest built from there.
And did you go to JFK Library? Were you able to see
When I was at UMass Boston, we had free access.
Oh,
so
wow.
I attended quite a few times.
Wow.
Very interesting place.
But then, I guess, come right out and say it, you're very conservative.
That is correct.
Very conservative. And how did that come up? Because people your age, into that 40 range, don't tend to be conservative. What sort of was your wake-up call to say, something doesn't click here?
Well, I always believed in the tenets of God,
Yeah.
family, and country. So I think that by nature, many of us are conservative, but politically, obviously growing up in Boston, I was kind of more in the liberal space. But I think what really clicked my light was 2016 when President Trump ran. And I say that because, I was, interning at the mayor's office, and, that's a Democratic stronghold. And I really was not too impressed, nor was I, really interested in being a Democrat at that point. Because when you get close and you kind of see how they operate, you're like, oh, okay, it's a different ball game. And then when you think about the Republican Party for a very long time has been pretty much the elite party, the party for the country club. They're not the party for the common man and woman. And I think what really piqued my interest was the idea of America first, the idea of populism.
Yeah.
I've heard about the Tea Party, but obviously growing up, they always used to say the Tea Party was racist. They're only forming this Tea Party because Obama was black, which is totally false. But because they didn't want the public to really understand the message that the Tea Party was trying to convey. But what President Trump's agenda was for America first was just, that's what did it for me, because I hated the both parties, because both parties are establishments. They were not there to really see after the interests of the people that they represented.
Right.
So when I heard the tenets of America first, which means less dependence on China, bringing back American manufacturing and jobs, returning this country to God, bringing God back to the country, and allowing that freedom of religion, which has been so trampled upon, to come back. No more foreign wars, no more intervention into other countries' problems. I like that.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of developed in college my political philosophy now is America First conservative. Wow. Or a nationalist, as they would say.
I was reading through some of your things, and I'm so impressed because I'm gonna be honest. The First Amendment, I think I'm afraid these days to say how I really feel about issues, because if you have children, if you have grandchildren, and in my case I have both, so you don't want people to either alienate you or ostracize your grandchildren or even start the hate. So we were it's funny that you mentioned this because we were at a concert many years ago. It was right after President Trump was elected. And we got talking to a couple of people and before the show started, and they were clearly conservative, and they turned to us and said, so who did you vote for? And we both went like this. We looked around to see who was listening, and we whispered, President Trump. And I realized then, we are all afraid. I am afraid. I'm afraid. You're not.
No.
You speak about, I've gone through your things. You speak about everything. You spoke about the case for Donald Trump.
Yes.
I have to ask you, with the last few days, June 19th, Hunter.
Yeah.
Hunter. What's your take on that?
It's obviously that the justice system is unfair. It's clear. It's clear that the system is rigged against conservatives. It's rigged against people who are America first. It's rigged against people who refuse to bow down to the system. And as we've seen when Hunter Biden, and the thing that's so funny about that case is they could have actually gave him a real sentence and the father could have pardoned his son.
Right.
But but this is how blatant and arrogant they are.
Yeah.
This is how they want to throw it in our face. You could have went down that road, but they said, no, we're going to just slap them on the wrist.
Yeah.
Because you know what? We can. So you guys take that. We're going to try to put Donald Trump, the political opponent, in prison for the rest of his life, but we're going to slap this guy on the wrist who's really a criminal. I mean, him and President Biden, they're both criminals. So,
absolutely. I mean, if I was carrying a gun and I decided to dispose of it in front of one of the schools, they trace that back to me. I am in jail.
You're done.
They're throwing me in jail.
Forget
Selling
about it.
drugs, pornography in pictures of children, and even tax evasion.
It's disgraceful.
We go to jail.
Oh yeah, forget about it.
We go to
You're
jail.
done.
There are people still in jail from what they call the insurrection. I called it. Part of it, I'm sure, got heated, but basically it was using your First Amendment right to disagree.
Well, the funniest thing about that is most people who are in jail for their quote-unquote insurrection, or as we call it, the riot, they were people who just wandered into the Capitol. So you're telling me that putting somebody who didn't know any better that wandered in the Capitol in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the people there were a little bit out of control.
Absolutely.
And, there had to be some type of consequence. But seriously, you're putting somebody who wandered into the Capitol in prison. It's insane.
Yeah. And then Tucker Carlson,
Yeah.
who put the whole thing out, step by step. He's gone.
Yeah.
They got rid of him.
Because they showed us that they were letting people in and hey, come look around.
Yeah.
It's sad.
That's the scary thing about the First Amendment today, because people such as me, and I'm not alone with this, are afraid to speak their mind.
Don't be afraid. See, the problem is we're going to be conquered if we operate in fear. This is a new day. This is a new time. We're part of a new movement. And I have an article I'm going to be working on. I'm talking about this new American revolution, this new America First revolution. And I'm going to say this. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a Donald Trump guy. I don't shy away from that. But I'm very proud of Bobby Kennedy for what he's doing on the Democratic side. Because you know what he's doing? With him and President Trump, they're defeating both sides of the establishment. They're defeating both sides of the swamp, and they're both saying a similar message of, hey, we want to go after the deep state. We want to go after the globalists. We want to go after the neocons. We want to go after the America Last Republicans and Democrats that have been destroying our country for decades. And I think that Americans who are on both sides of the political spectrum, whether you're supporting Donald Trump or whether you're supporting Bobby Kennedy, they're on one tune. Yeah. And I think that's powerful. That's amazing. It's a revolution.
It is. It's a powerful statement that many people support Bobby Kennedy Jr. and people, myself included, support President Trump. I'm wondering, do we have a caller? Okay. Maybe.
We have a call in.
Okay.
Nice.
In a name?
This is Jay.
Hi, Jay. What is your question for Rosheed?
Regarding the new American Revolution, I know Thomas Jefferson said some famous words that the tree of liberty has to be refreshed with the blood of patriots from time to time. And some people take it literally, and sometimes it is literal. But republics typically last 200 years. We're over. We're
Yeah.
past our use-by date.
Yeah.
Use that phrase.
Yeah.
How do we reignite it and keep it going without going into the streets?
Well, I don't advocate violence. I think that our movement is more powerful than any weapon on the face of the earth. You know how we would, go forward is through unity. We got to come together and we got to fight together. We cannot be fighting alone.
Exactly.
And I think that everybody has been fighting alone, standing alone. We're not defending each other.
Right.
I think that as conservatives, we're becoming victims. We're not protecting each other.
Right.
And I think that if we're going to be going forth to change our country through this new revolutionary idea of putting America first, on focusing on America and its people instead of globalist and neocon agendas, I think that it starts by us being united. We got to work together. We got to stick together. We got to support each other. We got to treat each other as family.
Right.
Americans got to treat each other as family. I got to look out for my fellow American. I got to want for my fellow American what I want for myself. So that's how we do it. We do it through unity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can't be afraid, like I am sometimes, to speak up. Speak up. What do you say when people say, because people have said it to me, why should I go out and vote? There's voter fraud. My vote doesn't count anymore. What do you tell those people?
Get off the bench and go vote. And if you want to fight against voter fraud, become a poll watcher.
Right.
They're not going to do to us what happened in 2020. That's just going to be the flat out. It's not going to happen ever again. Because we're not going to allow it to happen ever again. Like the caller just asked, how could we do this? Through unity.
Yeah.
We must be united in fighting to protect our fundamental right to vote and our fundamental right to free and fair elections.
You mentioned you're a Trump supporter. I am as well. If the election was held today, and Biden was the Democratic candidate, let's just say that, I think Trump would win. I think President Trump would win.
I think
I think people are waking up. The
Yes.
people that are Democrats.
Yeah.
I think even some of my older children, they didn't like Trump. They didn't
Yeah.
like his ideas. All
Yeah.
of a sudden, they're thinking, I don't like him. What some people said in 2016, I don't like him, but I like his policies. So I think people are waking up. I think the message is getting out. Their pocketbooks have been hit. I mean, what do you all think of that?
Well, go to the gas station.
Right.
Go to the gas station. Look at the price of gas. How do you feel as an American? We have more liquid gold than anyone else in the world, and we got our mouth in the kitchen of Saudi Arabia. We got our mouth in the kitchen of in Venezuela. And what type of food they're feeding us? They hate us. They feed us poison. But here we are begging them for energy. You look at the price of groceries. It's insane.
Yeah.
You look at the open border, the madness. We're allowing China to send through Mexico fentanyl that is killing hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace, and I think that a lot of people are waking up to the realities of, hey, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they've gotten hit. They see that they have children. They're in fear.
Yeah.
We have a
Oh,
call.
and one last thought on that.
Sure.
The beauty about Biden being in office is that America got the taste of America first, and you got the taste of America last. So in 2024, American citizen, you get to pick what you like the best.
That's right. I think we have a call. Do we have a caller?
I have a question, Jenny. Where do you see the war in Ukraine going, and how do you see it ending?
With Joe Biden, I see the war in Ukraine leading possibly, God forbid, to World War III.
Yeah.
The war in Ukraine has created a situation where the smallest of incidents could ripple to a nuclear war. I think the war in Ukraine is ridiculous. I think the war in Ukraine has nothing to do with the United States of America. It's a Slavic disagreement about borders.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that the reason that we're here is because of obviously globalism.
Yeah.
President Biden was forcing Ukraine into NATO. And though I don't condone Russia's invasion, Russia did what it felt was necessary to protect itself. And here we are. President Biden is not interested in peace. Zelensky is not interested in peace. And Putin has no reason to be interested in peace.
Right.
And what I see is, as we spoke earlier, I think we're at $113 billion into Ukraine in 1 year. We spent about, I think, $144 billion in Afghanistan, over 20.
And there's been absolutely, positively no diplomacy.
None.
They haven't sent anyone over to try and say, at least for right now, let's have a peace, talk about this, send our people in. I haven't seen that.
They're not interested.
I haven't seen that.
It seems like it's a big money laundering operation.
agree.
We're dumping billions of US dollars into the most corrupt country in the world.
Yeah.
And then we had the Pentagon saying, oh, we accidentally send them $6 billion. I think it was $6 billion more on accident. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a joke. And you know, I'm interested in politicians who are more interested about America's infrastructure, about America's problems, than they are about Ukrainian infrastructure and Ukrainian problems. And it seems like the swamp on both sides, Democrat and Republican, are more interested in Ukraine than they are about America.
Absolutely.
And it's disgusting.
You mentioned the southern border before we
Yes.
had our caller. I want you to finish that thought because they are fentanyl is pouring.
Yeah.
I don't know of one person really that I know that their family has not been touched by a fentanyl overdose.
Yeah.
Our children
Yeah.
in young adults. It's not just high school kids. There are young adults, older people. They're dropping dead.
Yeah.
It's flooding our border. No
Yeah.
one's stopping it.
Yeah. It's the reverse opium war that China is waging. They want to kill a generation of Americans.
a good job.
And they're doing a good job. And you know, this ends by military action against the cartels.
Yeah.
We have the best military in the world. We need to use our military against these ruthless cartels. Mexico is a failed state, okay? Most of that country is ran by the cartels. They have no government. And we need to be all over that because we cannot allow for people to kill our people without retribution and consequences.
Absolutely.
No sovereign nation could operate like that.
I'm looking at this, another one of my favorites that you wrote, and this is America needs Trump. I like that.
More than ever. It's 100% true.
You said more than ever. That was my notes. More than ever, we
More
need
than
Trump. And you mentioned the drilling. We could be self-sufficient in however long it takes these things to get up and running and be back in business again. Back in business. Day one, the president got rid of that.
Yeah.
Day one, he shut it down.
Yeah. And China owes, through the Phase 1 Trade Act, they were supposed to pay us between $1 and $200 billion. That would have closed the deficit that we have with them tremendously. Biden never enforced that because these people are totally America last.
Yeah.
And again, this is not even a partisan thing because we see this behavior on both sides. We see the Mitt Romneys.
Absolutely.
We see the Mitch McConnells. We see the rhinos. The Sununu's in New Hampshire who hates Trump so much when New Hampshire could benefit from the America First policy. Don't you think New Hampshire, I mean, it's a great place, but I mean, the second most expensive in energy?
Yeah.
I think New Hampshire needs some America First, needs some energy independence.
I think so too. I want to, just recently it was announced that Dr. Fauci, came out and he said we do not do gain of function, but we found out just the last 2 days that there's a spike protein that they found in the COVID, the actual illness, that shows that the spike protein was inserted, which means it came out of Wuhan, as President Trump has said.
Yeah.
What my fear is they'll re-release another virus. They'll somehow we'll go back to a COVID type of thing, masks, staying in your home, not being able to go to church, not being able to go to the grocery store unless you're a senior and you go at 6:30 in the morning. All of those things that they shut down. Schools, our children, they've gone back. They're behind 2 years from when the virus started. Children are no longer being educated, and I think the statistic for that today is bad too.
Yeah.
What's your feeling on Fauci? I'm going to say Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
And what he does, gain of function, and this COVID, because his fingerprints are all over it, in my opinion.
I think, you know, I like what Rand Paul is doing with Mr. Fauci. I think that, you know, a gentleman like Anthony Fauci should be in prison.
Yeah.
But I want to say this about future, you know, biological attacks from China on the United States. I'm a believer in God, and I believe that He's going to give us an awesome opportunity in 2024 to decide our own fate.
I hope so. Yeah.
And I think that if China, with President Trump in office, if China believes it's going to release another biological weapon, we're going to release some nuclear weapons of our own.
Yeah.
There's going to be some retribution for that type of behavior, because we can't tolerate it no more. We need to be strong again. We're not strong. This is why we see the Middle Eastern countries, they had a deal with Israel. They have now backed out of that deal, and they're uniting amongst themselves. China, Russia, the BRICS nations that are now coming together to challenge the dollar. The whole world is organizing against the United States of America. Why?
Right.
It's because we're weak.
Yes.
Well, why didn't this happen under President Trump? Because we had strength, and we let the world know, listen, there's going to be a way that we're going to play, and if we're not going to play that way, there's going to be problems. And we had a peaceful world. So,
Absolutely.
you know, we have a lot of work to do on the international stage to ensure that, you know, not only our country, that our allies, and that our country is safe and protected, but we need to bring back law and order to this world. This is a complete free-for-all right now, and we're seeing how bad this is.
Well, the perfect example, of course, is how we exited Afghanistan.
Yeah, it was a disgrace.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have even been there. I'm gonna tell you something. We have, I think, about 54 or 53% of the country reading below a 6th grade level.
Yes.
We have 21% of the country illiterate. Do you really think, I think, in my opinion, that statistic in addressing the literacy rates in the United States is more important than the Taliban not allowing girls to go to school? That's just my opinion. We had no business. What business did we have in Afghanistan? This was the Bushes.
Yes.
Again, another globalist, neocon,
Right.
America last game. And again, this game is being played by both Republicans and Democrats. And the day of those games are now over.
That's right. We have a caller.
Hi, Jenny, this is Dom from Boston.
Okay. Good evening, Dom. What's your question?
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead. What's your
Go ahead,
question?
Dom.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Is Rosheed there?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Dom?
Good, Rosheed. Rosheed, you're a well-read individual, and I have a question.
Sure.
What is the real reason behind this controversy with Christopher Columbus? I mean, there are individuals who are misinformed, misdirected, etc. But what do you believe is the real reason why they have picked this time to go against an American icon?
Thank you so much.
Great question, Dom. Thank you.
I love the Italian people. The Kappa Grecos, special shout out to them. The East Boston family, love them to death. Tommy DeMangela, one of the North End. I call Tommy my godfather. You know, no pun intended. But you know, the whole idea is to cancel culture.
Yes.
What is it about the Italian culture that is special to the American story? Italians believe in family.
Yeah.
Italians were discriminated against. They weren't considered white for a very long time.
Right.
They came to this country, and instead of begging, the Italians said, you know what? If the Irish are going to mistreat us, if the nativists are going to mistreat us, you know what? We're going to formulate our own communities. We're going to come together. We're going to have our own stores. We're going to police our own streets. We're going to take care of our own education. We're going to worship the way we want to worship, and we're going to make it in America. And that story is something that the left particularly hates, because the left wants us all to believe that we are going to be victims of our circumstances, and that we should all, you know, be subservient to those who dislike us. And the Italians are a group, like the Irish and many others, and the Jews as well,
Yes.
who said, no, we're not going to be subservient to those who dislike us. We're not going to be victims. We're going to be victors, and we're going to take care of ourselves and our people. And I think that's the norm that it used to be the great norm.
Yeah.
But this is the norm that they no longer want. Same thing was with black people before Lyndon Baines Johnson
Right.
took the fathers out the homes.
Yeah.
We were very resilient people, especially under the segregation and Jim Crow, democratic programs, by the way, that were inflicted upon us. We were very successful as a people because we believed in family, we believed in community, and we believed in doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So this is what they're trying to get rid of.
That's how they came after us, truthfully, us all. With the cancel culture, they hit Christopher Columbus, but way before Christopher Columbus, they hit God. They were allowed to do an art exhibit in the name of art. The crucifix was soaked in urine,
It's
and that was
disgusting.
allowed to be called art. They've come after God long before, and then they now went after Christopher Columbus. They're going after Abe Lincoln. No one is exempt from this.
No.
No one's exempt, and you're absolutely right. Unless we all really wake up, stand together, speak out,
Gotta
out,
fight.
fight. Absolutely. I'm looking at 4 minutes. I'm going to ask you, what would anything else you would like to get
No,
out?
please,
I have.
please. Do we have any more callers?
I
love
have another
questions.
question.
Yeah, hit me.
I have one. You know, we're worried about the nuclear attack,
Yes.
the nuclear war. A fear of mine is the grid, because
Oh, yeah.
they have attacked our grid.
Yep.
We just they haven't told us. There was all along the East Coast about 6 months ago, the grid was down.
Yeah.
That is the easiest thing they can hit, that and the ATMs. So I'm not sure we're going to be hit with a nuclear war. They're going to
EMP
either.
attacks, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think that every American right now, you're going to need a few things. The first thing you're going to need is God. The second thing you're going to need is food and water. And the third thing you're going to need is guns and ammunition.
Wow.
Because this is where we're going to. Our grid, President Trump actually put it out in an executive order to harden infrastructure, our critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
President Biden and his administration said that was unnecessary, and they rescinded the executive order. So when it comes
Right.
to our grids, we're extremely wide open. I think that, I know that this doesn't bring much comfort. If they hit our grids, we hit their grids back.
Right.
But, you know, we're still going to be down like they're down. And the thing about the Chinese and the Russians, they can handle that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
turn off an American's Wi-Fi for 5 minutes. See how they freak out. Those people are, they're culturally, I mean, their grandparents, great-grandparents were starved by Mao and Stalin. They had to live in terrible conditions. They're accustomed. Americans aren't.
Right.
So I think that, you know, when we talk about the worst case scenario, I say God, food and water, guns and ammunition.
There's 2 minutes, and I want to see if you've heard about this. In England, they're trying to take away cash. They're
Oh,
trying
wow.
to make it digital currency, and they're trying to do that here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go into some stores, and the line for cash is way back in the store where you use your credit card, you get right through.
Yeah.
So in England, that you have to have like one of those codes that they give you when you buy tickets or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot get into a grocery store unless you download that, have that app, then you can come in and shop. And the what I'm hearing about smart villages is similar in that you're going to have to be in these confined smart villages. We have 15 miles that you can go, and then you can't go any further because you won't get gas or you can't charge your car. We are in, fasten your seatbelt because we are in for a rocky road, and you're absolutely right. God, family, food, water, guns, and bullets. And there's 1 minute left, and I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you for
so
having me.
much
Hopefully
for
this
coming
could
out.
be
This has
the
been
first of many, you know?
absolutely. And one last word.
We look forward to seeing you guys if you're going to make it on July 10th.
Yep.
The Case for America First. If you liked what you heard, we're going to have that event, and hopefully,
We'll
maybe,
have more.
we'll
We
be
will
doing a
have
tour
more.
across the state for the Case for
Absolutely.
America First.
So look for Rosheed Walters. He is coming to Waltham, and he will be going around the state. God bless, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for
Thanks for
coming.
having me. This was great.
Thanks.